I have a question for you, darling. Where would you like to be buried? Well, imagine being so coveted in death that you are denied that choice. Your body is so valuable to others that you must plan your escape while still alive. You buy a lead-lined coffin. You instruct your friends, take me to the sea at night, sink me beyond the reach of the surgeons. Your wish isn't just whimsy. It's a practical defense against London's anatomists, men who might dissect you, clean your bones, wire your skeleton, and hang your mortal remains as a morbid jewel in their collections. What would you do to make your last wish hold? Would your efforts be enough to deter the body snatchers? That depends on the value of your bones and the appetite of the collector. Stay with me, and you'll learn whose skeleton hangs in this painting and why it shouldn't be there. Ireland, around 1761. When Charles Byrne was born, he was unremarkable. No larger than is usual. His mother, a stout Scotswoman with a strong voice, his father Irish, both of ordinary height. But as Charles left infanthood, he began to grow, as fast as a cornstalk, the neighbours said. Jests soon hardened into folklore. Perhaps he'd been conceived atop a hayrick and drew his stature from the sky. By his early teens, Charles towered over every man in the village. In that age, the average fellow stood 5'5". Charles made them look like boys. Word travels. A showman, Joe Vance, appeared at the Byrne door and promised fortune. Soon, Charles was exhibited across the counties, a one-man marvel, equal parts wonder and worry. London, 1782. Young and suddenly famous, Charles came to London, where handbills christened him the Irish Giant. He was a cathedral of a man, moving through rooms built for smaller mortals. He took an elegant apartment over a cane shop, and for the price of a ticket, fashionable London could say it had seen nature overstep herself. Showmen inflated numbers, as showmen do, but the figure in the doorway needed no embroidery. And yet, the very size that paid the rent was a burden. Charles drank for the pain and for the relief it promised. The noise of his growing bones could be heard across the room. Today, we would call it pituitary gigantism, driven by a tumour that floods the body with growth hormones. In the 1780s, there was only curiosity and pity, and a particular pair of eyes watching with something keener than interest. The surgeon. John Hunter was the most formidable anatomist of his age. Brilliant, impatient, acquisitive. He invented surgical techniques when others merely imitated the ancients. He built a private museum to house the strange and the splendid. Skeletons, preserved organs, creatures of air, land, and sea rendered into teaching tools and trophies. Hunter collected with an unappeasable hunger. When word spread that Charles was in town and growing unwell, Hunter's appetite sharpened. He wanted the giant's remains for his museum. He asked politely, even offered to purchase the body in advance, but he was refused. Thereafter, everyone knew two things: that Charles was failing and that John Hunter wanted him. Of course, Charles knew it too, and he was terrified. Many at the time believed that dissection would leave them imperfect at the resurrection. A soft-spoken, religious young man, Charles dreaded that fate more than any other. Hunter, who knew the signs of decline, did what ambitious men do. He paid people. He posted observers, bribed undertakers, and bided his time. The decline. A year after his London debut, the shine had dulled on the Irish Giant. Charles had taken to the bottle with dangerous devotion. Performances were cancelled, receipts dwindled, his lodgings grew meaner. But he had saved £700, his fortune, in 2 banknotes, which he carried on his person, perhaps trusting that no one would rob a giant. He was mistaken. Worse, the city gave him more than applause. It had given him tuberculosis. His hopes and health faded. The Irish Giant was dying. A plan for the sea. Facing the end, Charles made plans to thwart the surgeons. He bought a lead coffin, paid for a covert journey to the Kent coast, and bound his friends with promises. Bury me at sea, in deep water where hunter's blade can never find me. On Sunday, June the 1st, 1783, Charles Byrne died. He was 22. His friends kept vigil over the lead coffin, then hurried it the 70-odd miles to Margate. They chartered a vessel and, with solemn care, consigned the enormous burden to the waves. Newspapers recorded it plainly. The Irish giant had been taken to the sea, agreeable to his own request, being apprehensive that surgeons would anatomize him. Theft. But the foremost surgeon in London knew better than anyone how bodies were acquired. Here, the accounts diverge in their particulars. Were friends bribed? The undertaker? But the conclusion itself is chillingly simple. A coffin went to sea weighted with stones. Meanwhile, in his country house, John Hunter was skimming the fat from a copper vat in which Charles Byrne's bones were boiling clean. So fearful was Hunter of retribution that he dispensed with the usual careful dissection. The work was rushed. The bones, when later displayed, wore the evidence in their mottled brown and yellow coloration. Hunter's haste baked into the skeleton itself. A trade in bodies. Hunter did not invent the trade in corpses. Lawful cadavers were scarce. Executed criminals and the destitute poor supplied the dissecting rooms. An entire economy of resurrection men, that is, grave robbers, grew to fill the gap between medical demand and legal supply. But Byrne's case cuts differently. He did not merely fail to consent. He explicitly refused. He asked for the sea, and he knew exactly whose knives awaited him. Exhibited. 3 years after Charles's death, Hunter unveiled a huge skeleton. It drew immense crowds and reinvigorated his museum. In Joshua Reynolds' portrait of the surgeon, look into the shadows. A pair of elongated feet hangs behind him, almost an afterthought, almost a confession. John Hunter had claimed his giant. At the Royal College of Surgeons, the Hunterian collection became a pilgrimage site. Students, physicians, and the curious public filed past ranks of unusual specimens, two-headed calves, diseased organs, lizards with too many tails. In that landscape of preserved strangeness, the Irish giant soon became the best-known human specimen, and for 2 centuries, a fixed point on the museum circuit. Byrne's bones, stained deep brown by their hurried preparation, measuring 7 feet 7, towered above onlookers from a coffin of glass. But by the late 20th century, the mood was shifting. Medical students still learned there, but the giant's presence began to read less as an instructive example and more as an ethical contest. In 2011, ethicists Len Doyle and Thomas Munzer argued that the museum should honour Byrne's explicit wish and bury him at sea. The replies, some supportive, some indignant, made clear that the skeleton had become a cultural lightning rod. Was it a unique research resource or an ongoing wrong? When the museum closed for refurbishment in 2017, curators faced the question directly. In January 2023, on the eve of reopening, the trustees announced that Byrne's skeleton would no longer be displayed. In its place, visitors would see the Reynolds portrait of John Hunter, the one with the giant's feet hanging in the background, as the museum opened a broader conversation about how we exhibit human remains at all. The bones themselves would be retained for genuine research purposes into disorders of the pituitary gland. It was a compromise, an uneasy one. But we did not learn medicine by asking nicely. We learned for a long time by taking, by treating the dead as raw material and calling the hunger for knowledge a virtue that excused the appetite for collecting. Men like John Hunter changed the world. Men like John Hunter saved lives. But the bill for those lessons is still being paid. So let the ledger be honest. We owe surgeons, body snatchers, and the dead more than gratitude. We owe them our lives. Charles Byrne asked for the sea. Whether he receives it or not, we can at least give him what the sea gives: depth, quiet, rest. Let the empty space where his bones once stood do some of the teaching. Museums, journals, and classrooms hold two truths at once: that the past was both brilliant and cruel, and the point of progress is not to justify the cruelty, but to outgrow it. Here's my question to you. Where do Charles's bones belong? Answer below. I look forward to reading your thoughts. And as ever, I remain your obedient servant, the Marquis de Sadness.